it's a mutually respectful, symbiotic relationship where we are getting information from the community. We have made leaps and bounds, I believe, in connecting with nonprofits and grassroots organizations. We are anchoring in and making sure that we are fortifying our partnerships and moving forward with purpose and with intent. And we continue to work with city departments and RPD and making sure that we collaborate, that we partner, and that we work together effectively. So with that, and Larry emailed me a little bit earlier today, and I want to pass out the recommendations that Deb made relative to the bylaws and how to change that. So I want you to have an opportunity to read through that. I'll hand that out tonight, and then we can come back and have a conversation about that. There's a lot of information that we needed to get to, but I wanted to uplift that. She did craft a memo as well as some recommendations around our bylaws and how to move forward. Okay? You're presenting up here. Be careful. Sound good? Larry?
It's for the phase 1, phase 2.
Yes.
Is that, it says July, December 2025. Should that be 26? I'm assuming we haven't started.
Yeah, the foundation, that was collecting the information, getting the data, right? So we did do that.
Okay. So
yes, that was the work with our, okay. That was work that the consultant led.
Okay, so the all-staff retreat, revising tour. So that was the stuff as it was going?
Yes.
Okay, yep, I got it. Okay.
Yes. Does that answer your question? Okay. Good. Okay. All right. Give me just a second. I need permission to access it. Need permission to access it. What's coming up? So let me say, I'd like access, please. What had happened was, right? With me now? Oh, great. Thank you. Go. Okay, good.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Dejan Hall. I am the Director of Policy and Oversight, as well as the Interim Director of Accountability and Transparency. For those who are unfamiliar with that title, Accountability and Transparency is a division created after combining both the Case Management Division and the Former Investigations Division. I'm going to start by giving a brief overview of some of the work that's been going on in both of those divisions before we go into a presentation for our newest proposal for change. Starting with the Policy and Oversight Division, we've been hard at work preparing the privacy impact analysis for its public debut. I'm proud to say it's now on the website as of Monday. And next week on the 12th, we are doing a panel presentation of that project to the public as part of our public input process. We are set to release the Drones as First Responders program proposal for change next month. That is the presentation that you'll hear today. So you get the preview of what's to come to the public. In addition to that, we continue working on our RPD budget oversight investigation. We've gotten new information from the budget office, and we're gonna do some recalculation on overtime numbers for RPD before we release that project to the public. And then with accountability and transparency, over the past 2 months, we've received 19 complaints. We've been sending notifications to RPD about those complaints and creating a case log for each of the investigators, just in case, or rather when we get investigatory powers back, everyone is clear on what the next steps are from day one. In addition to that, work continues on the joint projects between the Accountability and Transparency Division and Policy and Oversight, that being our look into how RPD handles sexual assault cases, as well as our look into how AI is used in policing. We've sent 2 SOIs, or source of information requests, to RPD related to both of those projects. We've also recently, as of this week, gotten some information from the city's IT department related to their AI policy and how it may intersect with RPD. And today, for this next presentation, I'll be joined by Accountability Inspector Josh Singletary. This is the first project in which the Accountability and Transparency Division worked alongside the Policy and Oversight Division to put something together for the public. And I'm really grateful for Josh's help in helping to draft this proposal for change and helping me here with this presentation. So with that, we'll get started. So, drones as first responders, a proposal for change. I know there are some new members of the board and some members of the public who are not yet familiar with that term, proposal for change. It is our informal way of titling what is a formal policy recommendation to RPD. In order to create a proposal for change, we review and assess the 4 Ps of the Rochester Police Department, that being their policies, practices, procedures, and patterns. After our initial assessment, we then draft a proposal for change and present that to you, the board, before taking it on a 30-day public input period where we seek community impact, take that impact, and bring it back to you for a final vote whether to incorporate it into the draft or not. Once we have that final vote, we send it to the chief of police, who will then have 30 days to respond with whether they agree with the formal recommendations or disagree, and where they do agree, what their plan for implementation is. So that's what a proposal for change is. This particular project will center on the concept of drones as first responders. This is a relatively newer advent in the world of policing, and in order to help us work through this presentations, we've developed a bit of an agenda. First, we're going to talk about common definitions. You'll see some abbreviations, some acronyms throughout the presentation. We want to make it clear what those mean before we go into discussing the more in-depth nature of the recommendations. We'll give you a bit of the background of how this project came to be, and then we'll discuss about 18 recommendations that we've developed meant to ensure equity in the implementation of drones as first responders. We've developed some procedural safeguards we think will help the program stay within the confines of the law and won't supersede Rochesterians' privacy rights in any way. And then lastly, mechanisms for public accountability, ways to make sure that the program is transparent, and that the public has a say in its ongoing implementation. So, here are a few of the common definitions. For those of us who play video games, there's something called Call of Duty, and in it they have something called a UAV. So this may be common for some folks, but for others it's a new concept. A UAV is an unmanned aerial vehicle. That is an aircraft that navigates without a human pilot on board. It is part of a larger technological ecosystem called a UAS, or unmanned aerial system. That includes not just the drone itself, which is the equipment, and the pilot who remotely controls the aircraft, but also the network and the digital evidence management system, which we heard a little bit about earlier. Drone footage currently, when it's collected by RPD, is stored in Genetec clearance, which is the same platform in which our body-worn camera footage is housed. And then drones as first responders itself. That concept refers to the rapid deployment of a UAS, or unmanned aerial system, in response to calls for service. They're typically launched from a station, or what we call station drones, which are usually placed on roofs, on towers, or on a pole, and designed to allow for the rapid deployment once a call is received. And these are usually pre-selected locations, strategic locations, chosen by the implementing agency, in this case, Rochester Police Department. And then the last acronym I'll introduce you to, if you're not already familiar, is the FAA, or the Federal Aviation Administration. And it's a federal agency that pretty much governs the skies, if you will.
Okay, so we're gonna, y'all can hear me okay? We good? Okay. All right, we're gonna go into some of the background regarding how RPD acquired their drone technology. They've been purchasing drones for the last few years. So in 2024, they applied for a grant, received $10 million in state funding. Of that $10 million, $90,000 was used to purchase the drones. This was used for different programs prior to drones as first responders being a pilot. This was used at festivals, different public events, and public safety initiatives. During the pilot program, which they launched in April of last year, this was done in Clinton section. They used some of those previously purchased drones to respond to certain calls in the area. So this was slated to last about 45 days from April 1st until May 15th. During that process, Chief Smith actually requested that we draft a policy around drone as first responders. Also, he appeared before council to ask for reimbursement because there was some overtime accumulated during the training and implementation of the pilot program. As of right now, we still don't have the results. It doesn't appear those results have been published by RPD from that pilot program. We're interested in seeing those results. So that just gives you a bit of background about the program. If you look in this picture, you can actually see this is downtown outside of the federal building. This is an example of the drone being used to carry out some investigative process. Yeah, this picture, is this better? Yeah. Okay. Way better? All right. So if you look at this picture, this shows a drone being used downtown. This is outside of the federal building for some investigative process. So you can kind of see what the drone looks like. And we can go on to our first set of recommendations.
So I mentioned earlier the importance of equity in the implementation of drones as first responders. One of the things that we discovered in our research, or our assessment of this concept, some of the early adopting states like California and Texas, some of the municipalities that chose to implement this program encountered a bit of an issue with disparities in where station drones were located. There's this common trend in those cities and states that drones were placed in underserved black and brown communities at a disparate rate compared to the rest of the cities. And that's something that we want to make sure is not repeated here, and that we're not behind the ball in addressing equity in the city of Rochester. So in order to do that, one of the things we are recommending is that we mandate equitable placement of station drones throughout the city and require quarterly equity audits to be conducted by this very board. We also want to make sure that we're prohibiting the drones from being used in any way that infringes upon the rights of citizens from particular communities. And we also want to make sure that that use prohibits routine patrol sweeps or the monitoring of First Amendment protected activity. This really is born from, again, something we noticed in our research. The city of Baltimore had an aerial reconnaissance program where they were doing routine monitoring of the entire city to the point that they could actually map what the daily routine of certain citizens were. All of this was done without a warrant, and the Fourth Appellate Circuit of the United States Federal Court actually had to strike that down and point out it's unconstitutional. Since then, police departments have taken a more targeted approach of the same sort of strategy. So we're hoping to, well, we're not hoping, we're actually recommending that RPD ban that sort of behavior while also banning some new age technology like facial recognition or other biometrics, and outright, flat out, do not arm drones here in the city of Rochester. We are recommending that the Rochester Police Department provide direct access. This, again, is something that Leslie touched on earlier, our executive director, regarding body-worn camera. And again, this is the exact same database that we're talking about, Genetec clearance. So when we want to do the audits of the use of these drones, we want to make sure that we have direct access to the database that would allow for a more full audit of how the drones are being used in an operational sense. And then the last thing we're doing to ensure equity is to require, where there are disparities discovered, that the police chief, within 30 days of being notified, create and publish corrective action plans to make sure that equity is a constant thing throughout the city. And here are examples of what station drone docks would look like. As you can see, they're affixed to a high point within a city. Once a call is received and the drone is activated, the hood pops open, they fly into the sky and go to where they're told to go by the human operator.
Okay. So this next series of recommendations, we're calling these procedural safeguards, and really the purpose behind them is obviously this technology, which is being used by RPD, can also be used in concert with other technology like the facial recognition mentioned by Dejan, and all the other applications and integrations amongst that technology. And for the Rochester community, there's an understandable concern about rights to privacy being violated, or if this would be used to conduct surveillance on members of the public. So really that's the purpose behind these procedural safeguards. First and foremost, to try to allay those concerns, we want to limit the deployments to what's already been authorized. And obviously exigent circumstances such as search and rescue, disaster responses, and other high-risk call types, which will be listed in the policy. As far as data retention and deletion, if there is data collection by a drone and this does not fall within the category of evidence, or it's not related to a specific case, this needs to be deleted within 7 days because it serves no purpose. If there's a First Amendment,
What's an example of that? I'm not sure what.
In some cases, the drones, I guess, can just record people. Maybe there was, I don't exactly know how it happens, but in case it does, this will be deleted within 7 days. Also, if there's a collection of data by a drone or which violates First Amendment rights, such as people gathering peacefully or protest, this would need to be deleted within 30 days. Obviously, the basis for retention is if this is certified evidence, if this is a part of a specific case, then yes, you would have to retain the data.
I have a question in regards to what's the in regards to deleting within certain time frame. Is there a report or some documentation that assures that it's been deleted?
I believe RPD is mandated by state law to keep a record of all their footage that they are deleting. There's actually New York state law that tends to govern evidence management. So yes, there is forms of that.
So would it make sense for the PAB to have a report that verifies that this was deleted, because just as a safety mechanism to make sure?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I didn't know when you were going to take questions, but my question is, given the fact that there's no policies and guidelines now, and you indicated that we've already received millions of dollars for drones, so they're operating now without any rules, correct?
So there is a drone general order. It's 418. And what we're doing with these recommendations is adding to that general order to cover the Drone as First Responders program, which is a relatively new concept to the city of Rochester. For those of us who have been to events like Jazz Fest, you may notice off in the corner somewhere near Parcel 5, there's usually a police van, and they'll have on the ground some drones that they may need to rapidly deploy should something happen throughout the course of the festival. So that's been in operation for some years now. So they definitely have policies governing the regular drones. But this concept of 911 calls requiring rapid deployment of drones directly to whatever the call source is new. We've only seen a 45-day trial in which there has been no published report of its efficacy. We just don't know whether it was efficient, how well it worked. But we have been asked by RPD to produce a policy for the eventual implementation of a permanent program, and that is where where these recommendations are coming from. And to your point about when we're taking questions, we're hoping to do so at the end. But I appreciate the energy and enthusiasm of each of you.
Sorry about that, Joshua.
All right. So to sort of piggyback on talking about the unpublished data report from the 45-day pilot, our next recommendation, we would be requiring monthly public flight logs. This is to make sure that the public is aware of what these drones in this particular program are being used for, what the operational metrics and costs are, if there have been any complaints or violations, which is very important. Also, echoing again, protecting First Amendment rights. We want to prohibit people from feeling that they're being monitored without cause, without any reasonable justification or any related case, not just recorded for the sake of recording. We want to require FAA certification. Obviously, if you're operating a flying craft in the city, you should probably be certified to do so. I think everybody can agree with that. Annual constitutional privacy bias awareness trainings for all of the pilots. Different mechanisms such as internal investigations when there are violations of this policy, which could lead to piloting privileges being revoked from the officers and also potential prosecution. Lastly, implementing an annual policy review to make sure that the policy is still effective a year from now after this program has been put into practice. We're going to see what works with the policy and where there's some areas for improvement. And also every 2 years having a public hearing. This program, based on our recommendation, would sunset after 3 years, and then the only way for it to be reauthorized would be City Council. All right, so those are our recommendations for procedural safeguards. Lastly, we're going to talk about public accountability again. So Dejan went through some of the definitions earlier. We think it's important that people understand the language that will be used when discussing this program, and which will likely be in all of these reports that we won't release to the public. So clear operational definitions, including what DFR means, equity audits, what a station drone is, to make sure that the public knows how to interpret the data that they're going to receive. Setting an effective date so that the public knows when this program is going to start, so that they can understand why a drone might be arriving at a scene before an officer gets there or in conjunction with an officer. Also requiring city council approval for the implementation, including publication of the pilot results, technical specifications, community impact statements as well before public hearing, which again will be happening every 2 years. We want to mandate a separate council approval for any program expansion. So if they're going to purchase or reallocate more drones for the DFR program, this should require city council approval as it happens, or any other type of expansion, different launch sites, more station drones, etc.
For the community impact statements, that is exactly what a privacy impact assessment would be. So you may, again, recall the last time we all met, Oversight Manager Sarah Jinks came before you all with a presentation about privacy impact assessment. That is something that is going to be key with implementation of this, just so before implementation, there is a clear record of RPD's consideration of how this new piece of technology will impact the lives of everyday Rochesterians.
Okay. So yeah, our last few recommendations here. Obviously, Rochester is a sanctuary city, and any policy from RPD should honor that status. So we want to prohibit any data sharing with immigration enforcement or any other law enforcement bureau or any non-law enforcement agency. Really should be only kept by RPD and protected in that regard. Also logging all data access, copying, deletion, any altering of the data that will be collected by the drones. An annual community impact survey. This is how we keep track of how the public feels about the program. Do they feel it's needed? Do they feel that it's being abused? Do they feel that it is beneficial? That is how we would ascertain that sentiment. And ensuring FOIA compliance whenever there is a Freedom of Information request. Making sure that there's disclosure of non-exempt records and acknowledgments within 5 business days of that request being made.
Okay. So really the broad overview before we take questions, the purpose of these recommendations is really to, one, ensure equity, ensure that the implementation and the pre-implementation and the assessment of this program has accessible language to the public so that the public can always have ownership in how they are policed in some way. And then the third layer, which is a little more subtle throughout this presentation, is to make sure that those who are elected have involvement in the not only the funding, but also the actual policies and implementation of this program. So with that, I'm about to open the floor up for questions. But first, I want to just again thank Josh, who, as you all know, was hired as an investigator. And roughly 1 year ago, his entire job changed. And this sort of work was completely outside the scope of those investigators. They've all had to learn new skills, one of which is public presentation. So I really just want to again thank Josh for stepping out of his comfort zone, helping to author this presentation and the policy itself, and helping to present to you all in the public. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Jack.
Take a bow. Take a bow.
All right.
So with that, I will take questions.
Okay, I would like to leave one question. I think it's great that you're putting these policies in place, but county police, state, federal, they will be exempt from this?
Yeah, we do not have jurisdiction over federal or county law enforcement. And I do just want to correct one thing that was said. We are not barring the sharing of data with all law enforcement. We specifically mentioned immigration because we are a sanctuary city.
Right.
and we said non-law enforcement entities. So sometimes the DIMS systems, like clearance, can have a secondary right to data and may use it for things like marketing or development of other tech. We're going to bar the city of Rochester from sharing the data they collect for those purposes. However, we understand that some of the footage that's collected might be used in criminal prosecutions and might be a tool to that end. So that will not be barred. But again, we cannot recommend this to the county or to federal law enforcement. However, they are free to look at what we publish on the website and develop their own policies in light of what they read and discover.
Thank you for that presentation. Just a couple of questions here. So, just to make sure I understand, the policies that you're recommending, is it only for the first responder drones?
That's correct.
Okay. So it does not apply to other RPD drones?
No.
Okay. Is there any particular reason why we wouldn't want those policies to apply to all RPD drones?
No, there isn't a particular reason why we wouldn't. We specifically focused on drones as first responders because, again, this was a request directly from Chief Smith himself to us to develop a policy to that end. A General Order 418 covers the rest of the drones, and what we are recommending, instead of just a fresh general order, is addendums to 418. Some of the language in here can easily be amended to incorporate the other drones, should this board and the community see fit to recommend that.
It makes me wonder if it might be worth mentioning that we think this policy should apply to all use of RPD drones. In particular, because I think, as you mentioned, RPD uses drones to, to surveil First Amendment protected activities with some regularity, and they have been doing it for years. If that's something we think shouldn't be done, maybe we should, might be worth mentioning that.
Absolutely.
I also want to just ask about the data retention deletion stuff as it relates to like FOIL. So, how do we, if RPD can like delete their data, or if they're required to delete their data, how would someone be able to FOIL for it? Or like, I guess you could FOIL for it and they would say, we don't have it anymore.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then in particular, if it's related to like evidence for a case or something like that, let's, again, sort of a hypothetical here, say RPD were to, there to be alleged misconduct or an incident, but no one was arrested, RPD might say, well, no one was arrested, not a case, we're not saving it for evidence, delete it in 7 days. And then person goes and tries to FOIL the drone footage that might exist from that incident. Oh, sorry, we deleted it. Is that a possibility, or is there anything we could do about that?
I mean, we can alter the recommendation, absolutely. The goal of these retention policies is to limit that data being accessible, not just to RPD, but anyone else, and to ensure that people's privacy rights are protected. That is a legitimate concern you point out about FOIL and about prosecutions. I guess one of the ways to preserve things is to make sure that complaints are filed on a timely basis, which I think would toll the statute of limitations or the deletion sort of thing here. So.
Brief question about that presentation on March 12th. Is there any possibility for that to be streamed? I say that because I won't be able to attend, unfortunately, but I would love to see it, in particular the panel discussion.
Okay, I think that's a pace question. My hope is that we are streaming on the 12th, but if not, I'll be sure to report back.
It would be great if it was. I understand if it's not feasible, but I would appreciate it. It would be wonderful if it was. Thank you. Thank you for your work. Wonderful. Thank you. Perfect.
And I got a question. I don't know if it pertains. Well, it probably pertains. These drones, what do you call them? Rapid response drones?
Yes. Drones as first responders.
Okay. So are they they're not gonna take the place of first responders, are they?
No, the goal is either for them to arrive first to really investigate the scene, and then officers may arrive, or arrive concurrently with officers.
I'm sorry. So the drone's gonna get there first.
Sometimes.
Then they're gonna assess what's going on, and they're gonna send a signal back to whoever to let them know whether or not, whether they need the police, the fire department. That's what I'm trying to figure out. What are their actual responsibility for these drones?
In some occasions, they will arrive first, and there should be someone observing live what's happening on the scene. So it wouldn't send a signal back. The drone itself would have a human watching the footage live. So at that point, the call will have already been given to RPD officers in their patrol vehicles, who should either be en route or arrive concurrently with it. So it's not like that delay of decision making where I'm watching the drone footage and I don't think an officer needs to come. No, that's not what's happening here.
I was going on the fact with the police. What we went to with the Citizens Police Academy.
Mm-hmm.
They were telling us how they determine whether or not, you know, was it A, B, or C
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna send. So that's what I'm saying. So the drone's gonna take that place. That's all.
No, that still will happen. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Larry.
Two questions. One, I think it'd be good in the actual proposal for change, the longer version, if there is maybe a paragraph just about the pre-existing program, just so people understand there is a difference. I think it's not really.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of knew there was, but when it was clearly, the ones at the festivals when they're sitting by the fans is different than this one. I kind of thought that, but a lot of people may not realize unless we kind of make it clear that there's two different programs. And then for going back to our access issue and question, do we know within RP databases if there are county and or state drones used, and those are in those RPD databases for investigative purposes? That's something that we have access to be able to look at that drone footage.
We do not know.
Okay, so as far as we know, there's so this is just another example of an issue of something that is in the RP database where the charter says we should have access to everything in the database, but there's county drone information potentially or state drone information that we don't have access to. So somebody could have a complaint about something, and there is drone footage of it, but since it's from a different agency, RPD will not let us look at that.
Yeah, I can't confirm whether Genentech clearance, the RPD account, houses county or another municipality's drone footage or body-worn camera footage. That is something that will likely be discussed when our executive director meets with law and RPD. However, we have previously asked through formal recommendations for RPD to share their interagency agreements or memorandums of understanding, just so we can get a clearer sense of what policies govern when RPD works with the county or fellow municipal agencies. To date, we have not gotten agreement with that recommendation, so we really don't have a clear path of assessing what policies govern when two or more agencies work together.
Hopefully that might be something that we can talk to council about. I'm sure council asked for those, they will get them. We should have those also. That just helps inform the work. I'm not looking for necessarily thinking there's something nefarious, but we get to have an understanding. And also back to the access issue, there's something in the RP database as the charter says we'll have access to everything for transparency. And if there's drone footage from other agencies in there, the staff and the public should have access to that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to respond to something Larry had said about if there is video or drone footage or what have you that the county or the state has, theoretically that is FOILable. So we theoretically could access it like that way, just as any member of the public could access it. We'd have to submit a FOIL request, but theoretically, if we were looking at a situation that required that sort of footage, there would potentially be a mechanism to try to get it.
I was just going to reiterate what AJ indicated earlier, and I think if we have a drone policy, it should be a policy for all drones and not just drones as first responders, because we're trying to protect First Amendment rights here, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be trying to protect it with the drones that are currently in use also.
I guess I will just say the General Order 418 does have a deletion component to it. This is a bit more stringent, more strict than what's already in existence. So just to clear things up, there is a deletion or record retention policy currently in General Order 418. This is just an amendment to that. But to Larry and AJ's point, if we want things to be uniform, that is certainly something we can do.
It'd be interesting with the public things. Yeah, that 7 days, I think it's quick, but also it's protective. But let's encourage people to do a complaint within a month, so we know to ask for it. We ask for 30 days, so there's a creative tension there of like what the right number is. But
yeah, balance is difficult when it comes to tech and privacy. I saw Board Member Thomas.
No, I was just going to ask a question, but it's okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem. Board Member Brown. Mhm. Thank you. Well, if there are no further questions, thank you for your time. Oh, you have one?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Just giving an update regarding operations, which is the major. We had a Department of Labor complaint, so we did receive feedback. We received a report where all of the findings came back unsustained. There is another report that should be coming out soon, but we don't have that as of yet. Right now, we did do some training with our language access coordinator, Dr. Heather Feynman. That was handled on Friday, February 27th, I believe, or 28th. The 27th. On the 26th, I did meet with Board Chair William Clark and Larry Knox to talk about some training for the board. With that, we're going to roll out some modules handled by NACOL, and to look at some other trainings that we may have. I know that all of you now have completed your annual sexual harassment training, and there are some other trainings that we're going to go over when it comes to board compliance. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Presenting on behalf of PACE. Brittany was not feeling well. There are a few updates. As you are aware, we have been working on developing a New York State consortium of civilian oversight, and a proposal has been submitted to NACOL, which is the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. And that proposal will go before the board of directors for NACOL. We feel very positive and encouraged, and what I was informed is that they want to use the New York model as a national model to be replicated across the United States. So again, kudos to Board Member Knox. He started it, and we just took it across the finish line. But it really is very fortifying and very encouraging to hear the support that NACOL gave. They said, we really just want to ensure that we can replicate this all over. So they want to have a good model. So I think we put together a proposal that will move forward. They may just have a few questions, but I think I can say with assurance by April we should know if we are an affiliate of NACOL. So there's that update. On April 14th, an oversight agency by the name of CCRB, which is down in New York City, so they are our counterpart. They are holding a conference, a one-day symposium, pardon me, to have the oversight agencies in New York, and I think a few individuals from New Jersey might come, or Philadelphia. but we are working on the planning. I know that board member Derwin asked if there is a virtual component, so I did pose that today, and they're going to let me know. I don't have an answer back just as of yet, but that is in the makings. And then the last thing I'll just reiterate is that on March 12th, the presentation, and you should have a one-pager in your folders, Policing and Community Surveillance, Your Right to Privacy. We have not only the oversight or the proposal for change, but we also have a panel which includes NICLU, Oasis, Vocal, New York, and Teen Empowerment. So we're holding that on the 12th of March at 6 p.m. at the Thomas P. Ryan Center, which is at 530 Webster Avenue. And we know that that is during dinner time, so we will have a light dinner and refreshments, but you have to attend in person, AJ, in order to get the light dinner and refreshments. Okay, so that is the, oh, and then with PACE, because the weather is warming up, they will be hitting the ground running again, and we'll be out in the community. We already have invites that are coming in. And next Friday, the 13th, lucky Friday the 13th, I will be presenting with the PACE team to our EOC, which is the Rochester Educational Opportunity Center, and we are presenting to staff. And just in case the public is not aware, our EOC serves adult learners. So we are going to be talking to staff about what their rights are, but how to help students who are adults also know what their rights are. So we are very excited about that opportunity. So on the 12th, we invite board members to come. The next morning on the 13th, we invite board members to come. We are getting out in the community, and we are really trying to do the work. Thank you. So that is the executive director report, the PA departmental updates, and I turn it back to the chair for his update. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to start with the chairman's report, and then I'll move right into the training report. And for the chair's report, I do want to indicate that Larry and I did a tour of the finished space at 57 St. Paul Street, and they did a tremendous job in moving that space forward. We went through when it was unfinished, and it's completely different now. It looks great. Also, I had conversations with both Leslie and Dolores regarding some things that came up during the month, and one is, and we're working on fixing those. For example, in 2026, we're looking at having a consistent meeting date for the board. If it's going to be the first Thursday, it'll be the first Thursday of every month. This year, because of the move and the transition, we had to kind of break our schedule, but we will get back on it on a regular schedule in 2026. Also, we discussed the idea of moving our meetings around, rotating to community spaces where they had the capabilities to where we could live stream and where we could present to the public because of the open meeting laws. So we need that. So we're going to be investigating that. And another issue we talked about was parking for board members. And I know that you're working on that, Leslie, and hopefully we'll find out exactly, how we can park, because at 5 o'clock, you really can't get a parking space over there because of the transition and people that are leaving and coming. But we're working on all of that, so your calls to me haven't gone unheard, and we will continue to work on it and get the resolutions that you need. If there's no questions on that, I'll go to the training report. The training has been very robust for the last couple of months. We've been very active. For example, on Tuesday, February 10th, four of our board members went on a police ride-along, And thanks to Larry, we did it in the evening. It was Larry, AJ, myself, and Catherine. And also, we were accompanied by the administrative staff. And I will tell you, I could not believe that much activity was going on in the Rochester community on a Tuesday night. But we were pretty busy out there. It was a cold night, and I just want to thank Captains Bello and Sweatman for, taking us on those rides. We went in 2 separate cars, and were able to witness Rochester on a Tuesday evening. It lasted a little longer than we thought it would last, but they were de-escalating the situation. So I think all in all, I think it was very great. And Larry, I want to thank you for recommending evening instead of the normal ride along during the day. Sure.
I do want to say I think I'm really glad that's in the charter for board members to do that. I think it'd be good for us to do them yearly, and I'd love the evening, maybe Friday, Saturday evening next time, just to get But I will say, and without going specifics, there were a couple of calls that we did, especially one that was a mental health one that RPD did really well on. I thought, just from our perspective. And there was another one where there was a call with some people that were had a fire going that wasn't necessarily safe, and there was just really good care taken. Just being out there and see the interactions, positive, negative, I think is important, and just encourage the community to support the work that we're doing, because even as board, we're not paid up here. We're going to do that, things like ride-alongs are doing this work, but having that perspective was in the charter of seeing that, I think adds to our understanding of what the RPD goes through.
Right. Thank you for mentioning that, because one of the things I was impressed with is that was one of the coldest nights of the year, and it was a little homeless camp where they had the fire going. So the captains did not put the fire out; they just had to move it away from the building because it was a fire hazard, but allowed them to continue to be warm on that cold February night. So it was an experience. Also, as you heard earlier, the board has completed 100% of the board has completed their initial first training, and I think that is a great accomplishment that the board has done. And Larry and I have had several meetings with Dr. Smalls and Dolores regarding developing our training schedule for 2026, and we're moving along on that. We're working on building a dashboard with KPIs as it relates to board trainings, because we know there's several types of trainings. There's mandatory trainings that we all must take each year, and we want to make sure that we stay compliant on those trainings. And as you heard earlier, we're working with NACO to develop recommended trainings for the board also, because we want to make sure that we are well versed on the latest techniques as it relates to being a board member of a police accountability board. So more of that will be coming up in the future, but we will continue to work with the administrative team and continue to work with the national team to make sure that we can that we will be in the best possible position we can be. So, as I indicated, we're doing the dashboards, we're going to do the KPIs, and there's going to be much more to come in the near future as it relates to training and development for the board. Thank you. Then I'll turn it over to you.
On the Youth and Community Engagement Subcommittee, Board Member Wilson and I have been meeting regularly with Brittany and have been consistently impressed in the work that the PACE team has been doing. I know we heard a brief snapshot of that work, but I fully encourage everybody to look through the monthly report to have a better idea in detail of what the PACE team has been doing. Even in our cold February, they still were out in the community, and I believe there was 10 or 12 events that was happening in February. And for the month of March, Board Member Wilson and I will be focusing on really honing in on the vision we'd like to see for our subcommittee, to make sure that we could be as best of service to our PACE team, and really utilizing the strength of the board to support PACE. So that's our report for now. Anything to add?
Hearing nothing, we'll move on to, is there any old business? Any new business? I know there was a request to move into executive session, so with that out.
I would move to go into executive session. Very briefly, if I just want to mention some potential litigation.
Okay, good to get a second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, we're going to move to executive session. There won't be any votes taken in this session, so as you heard, it'll be a brief session, and we will be moving back to close the meeting now once we complete that work. Thank you. I'm just getting it together so I can. Hello, we're back from executive session. No votes were taken. So at this point in time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Any sec? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we are adjourned. Thank you.